Too big?
Nope, you're not. And if you were, what are we doing with that? Okay, pallbearers, if I can ask you to join me at the rear of the hearse.
Huh? Huh?
Okay, so if I can have an equal amount on each side facing one another. All the way in. Pass it out. I'll ask you to step forward as quickly as you can and grab a firm hold. We're going to back up and we're going to proceed from the couch towards the graveside. But not like that. We're going to go back towards where the rabbi is, and then we're going to turn and go. So this is the foot here, the feet on the other side. We need to go feet first. So for the majority of the time, you'll be turning the left hand and this side and the right hand. Does anybody need to switch sides for an
You can hold my hand.
Once we put it on the lowering device, on the rollers, if you'll please keep a firm hold of the handle and continue walking with it. We may need to adjust it. So again, firm hold of the handle. And underneath that access hook are these planks, these metal planks. So please watch your footing as you step. Step in and grab hold to it. Go ahead and grab a firm hold. Towards me.
This end on this black roller right there.
Firm hold. Continue walking. And once you guys become a little bit closer, still practicing the face.
Ashri Haish Asher Lo Halach Ba'atzasri Shayim U'Vederech HaTeim Lo Amad V'Moshav Leitzim Lo Yashav Ki Im B'Soret Adino Chefzo U'V'Torato Yehege Yomam V'Leila V'Haya Ke'etz Shosel Al Palgei Moyim Asher Birya Yitin V'Itei V'Yoleyu Lo Yibel V'Chil Asher Yasi Yatzliach Lechein Rishim Ki Kamitz Asher Titfenu Ruach Al Kein Lo Yokum Rishon B'Mishpat V'Chatoim Ba'adas Tzadikim Ki Eidei Adinei Derech Tzadikim V'Derech Rishayim Toived Mizmer LeDavid Adinem Yager Be'ahalecha Miyishker B'Harkat Shechel Helech Tamim Ufayel Tzedek V'Dever Emes B'Lvavai Le'Ragal Al Shena Le'Asal Re'Eira V'Cherpa Le'Nasal Karavai Nivze V'Einav Nimas V'Esiri Adinei Yechabed Nishba Lahara V'Layomir Kaspa Le'Nasa Meneshach V'Deshechat Al Naki Le'Lakach Eise Elo Le'Yimet Le'Elam Mizmer LeDavid Adinei Rei Le'Yechsei B'nei Steshi Yar B'Tzeini Al Meimenu Chaysi Nahaleni Nafshi Yesheve V'Yancheni B'Magli Tzedek L'man Shemai Gam Ki Elach B'Geit Salmavis Le'Ira Rakiato Yimadi Shiftecha Mishantecha Hema Yenachamuni Ta'arech L'Fanei Shulchan Neged Tzerurei Dishanta V'Hashem En Reishi Kaisi Revaya Achtei V'Chesed Yerdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai V'Shafti B'Beis Adinei Le'Erech Yamim. A psalm by David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He revives my soul. He directs me in the paths of righteousness for the sake of his name. Even if I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they will comfort me. You will prepare a table for me before my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup is full. Only goodness and kindness shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for many long years. A song of ascents, I lift my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help will come from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. He will not let your foot falter. Your guardian does not slumber. Indeed, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Lord is your guardian. The Lord is your protective shade at your right hand. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will guard you from all evil. He will guard your soul. The Lord will guard your going and your coming for now and for all time. What a day. The snow, the purity that it represents. In Judaism, it talks about how snow could have been any color, but it's white. It's not clear like rain, because it represents something. And certainly in Aspen, the heavens opened up today, our biggest storm of the year. And I think I know why it opened up, because there was someone entering and he cleared quite a large path to get in. And a truly giant entered heaven today. Our hearts are heavy with grief. Our minds blurred by the sadness of the realization that a man named Barry Schwartz, Binyamin Ben Shlomo, who so epitomized life, living each day with such joy and with such passion, has sadly come to an end. So I'd like to begin by expressing on behalf of my family, the Aspen Jewish Community Center, the Aspen community, and communities from all over and back home who are watching with us, who are alive today, our heartfelt condolences to Barry's beloved and devoted wife, Cheryl, or as Barry would say, his first wife, or his best wife, and may God give her the strength to cope with this great and huge loss. To Barry's children, Robert, Lauren, Rachel, and your spouses, Ben, Julia, Lance, and your beautiful family, his grandchild, and to all family members and friends who are watching and with us here today, who came to bid farewell and to show respect to a truly unique, beloved, and remarkable individual. Despite the sorrow, despite the tears, I feel there's something that is crying out for mention today. And in fact, I feel it is my duty to put this great loss into some sense or manner of perspective. When I reflect upon the life that Barry lived, I'm reminded of the teachings of the great and saintly Jewish mystic and sage, Rabbeinu Bechaya, one of the great biblical commentators of the medieval era, who in his writing poses the following question. It says, giving that one who devotes themselves to self-perfection can reach extraordinary high levels of growth and enlightenment, is it not better for one to focus primarily on one's own growth and development, or is it better to invest in working on behalf of others for the greater good of the community, or by building for others, by helping others, and by assisting others? So Rabbeinu Bechaya concludes that it is far more virtuous and meritorious to the surprise of no one of us to be more involved in inspiring and focused on helping others than attaining loftier heights for oneself. And he underscores this point through an analogy that I think Barry, a brilliant businessman, would appreciate. He invokes the concept, this is hundreds of years ago, of economies of scale. There is a manufacturer can earn a nice living by working on his own and charging a fair price for a product. If he or she were to expand their space and workforce and go into mass production, they can charge a lot less per unit and realize a disproportionately greater profit than had they remained a sole operator of a small outfit. Or to put it in business terms, sometimes a 25% return can be far more profitable than a 500% return. How so? Well, by having a larger and more diversified portfolio. A 500% rate of return on an investment of $100 would yield $500, which is nice. But a 25% return on an investment of $100,000 would yield $25,000, which of course is a lot nicer and a lot better. So too says the great Rabbeinu Bechaya, focusing primarily on yourself, on your own improvement, might indeed give you a higher rate of return, so to speak. But considering the limited scope of your operation, the limited size of your good deeds, there's only so far that business model, that investment strategy, or in our case, that lifestyle will take you. After one's time is up in this world and we move on to greener pastures, to the world of truth, it is only our good deeds that hold real value, or really any value. We are supported solely and exclusively by our portfolio of good deeds that we have accumulated during our time in this world. Perhaps Barry's sending me a message here. As it says in the book of Daniel, Matzdike harabim kikechavim, that those who work for the benefit of others are like stars in the sky who shine on forever. The good we do in our lives for others is eternal. That, my friends, is my perspective on the life of Barry Schwartz and what brings us all and gathering here all today, a blessed memory. Barry was a man who understood the economies of scale, not just as it relates to finances, but as it relates to helping others, to bringing joy to others, and being there for his fellow human beings. For this, so many can testify that his portfolio of merits is as large as it is diverse. That his deeds will continue to shine on in our days and for generations to come. I had the opportunity the last couple of days to read so much, especially online, and that people had sent me about Barry, and the amount of people that he had touched over the course of his life that was too short-lived is mind-boggling. His personality, Barry's personality, was a very big one. He was a real character. He was funny and full of generosity for everyone he would meet. He was gregarious. He greeted people with a genuine enthusiasm and an excitement. Whenever he met someone, he would say with his characteristic, "Oh my God" salutation, making one feel like they were a long-lost friend. I can almost visualize Barry arriving in heaven, meeting God with a big hug and smile and saying, "Oh my God." Together with Cheryl, they made people feel better, made people he met feel special. He would listen and offer real and selfless advice. He was thoughtful and considerate and willing to provide counsel when it was needed. Barry was in a business not necessarily known for its integrity and honesty at all times, but he had a sterling reputation with honesty and care. Barry was admired and loved by so many people from all backgrounds, races, creed, and religions. He had no enemies. It didn't exist for Barry. He was loved by all. His subcontractors loved him, and he would go out and buy lunch for all the job sites, for all the crews on his job sites. He really took care of people, And this word is used too often and often undeservedly, but in his case, he was a real mensch, a real unique individual. There are so many stories. There's so much we can share. We are certainly not the only ones, all of us here, just touched and invigorated by this larger than life personality that was Barry. He was upbeat, he was positive, he was approachable, expressive, and friendly, and at the same time, always respectful. Barry was straightforward and honest, never cruel or mean spirited. With Barry, you always knew where you stood, and it was usually in a very good place. In one form of another, Barry had a way of making everyone around him feel good. Everyone felt as though they had a special relationship with him, and you know what? Everyone would be right about that. They really did. During these difficult last days and couple of weeks, Cheryl and the family were all together with Barry. And this Shabbat, this past Saturday, things went a bit downhill, and the kids all got together and moved into the house, and they were all together as truly one unit, that what Cheryl and Barry created all these years all together. But even while on oxygen and struggling to breathe, Cheryl told me he did not quit fighting. He was on a trial medication and wanted to continue even in his last hours. And in his final hours, he was still giving business advice, directions, and suggestions. His soul departed, surrounded by Cheryl and family. And Cheryl, you were together physically for 40 years, but you'll be together in your heart and soul eternally. And this brings me back to putting the life that we're all here to recall, remember, and make sure that legacy continues into proper perspective. Back to the words of the prophet Daniel, Matzdike harabim kikechavim, that those who work for the benefit of others are like stars in the sky who shine on forever. The essential presence of Barry Binyamin ben Shlomo shall remain with us. And even on those difficult days or nights when you find yourselves missing him and longing for him, we can go out and look at the star-studded sky, and we can see Barry's unique and special star twinkling back at us, shining that radiant light, a light that will continue to illuminate our lives forever and ever. Or as Barry called it, the poetry of life, and it continues today and forever. Tehei nafshe tzurua b'tzror hachayim. May his beautiful and lofty soul be bound up in eternal life. May he continue to look out for his loved ones from heaven, for now and forever, and let us say Amen. I'd like to ask some family members to share some words in any particular order. Cheryl, if you want to go first, or you decide how to proceed.
Take my mask off, okay?
Please. Mics will pick you up a lot better.
My wonderful husband and best friend passed away from cancer, which he fought to the end. We shared a spectacular life together. I will miss his unique, funny personality, his love of me, our children, family, and friends. I was a child bride when we married, and I picked a true man, true family man, and mensch. Barry and I were opposites. Okay, Bear. Barry was funny. And I'm serious. I'm always on time. Barry was always late. But however, I was wondering if he was going to be late to his own funeral, but he was on time. I followed rules. Barry didn't care about rules. However, we shared the same values of family, honesty, respect, hard work, and giving to others. Barry would make deals on a handshake. I stopped that when I became an attorney after we got married. He valued honesty, truthfulness, and following through on his promises always. Barry loved people, and they loved him. Family was number one for Barry. He was always there for us, our friends, and people who worked with him, and even some strangers who literally would show up. People would share their life stories and problems with him always, even complete strangers. He was a good listener and advisor. Barry, as the rabbi said, always brought the contractors lunch. who are on our jobs. I've received so many emails and texts in the last days of people working with him to say how much they loved him. In all his years of doing business, he was loved by those he work with. My children, you're blessed. Daddy loved you and me with all his heart. You know that. You were his life. So was I. He adored all of us. As Daddy used to say, you have 50% of his genes. So remember, he will always be with you. And Barry, your first wife, will miss you tremendously. Rest in peace. I'll always love you.
That was true. I'll show you how to get through it. Oh, my mask is it's okay.
As we stand here today, ready to say goodbye to Dad, I wanted to say a few words about how much he meant to me. Dad was and continues to be my North Star for how I model myself. I find myself at many points in my life asking myself, what would Dad do? More often than not, I found myself calling him to ask him. As I've gotten older, I've come to realize that the relationship between myself and my dad is not as common as one might think. That the closeness of our family, the one thing that my dad valued, worked toward, and sought more than anything, is rarer than I might have ever thought growing up within it. I find myself blessed to have such a great dad, to be able to model myself after. That as I've become firstly a husband to Julia, and then a father to Miri, that I cherish the lessons that he showed me simply by being who he was and continues to be in our hearts. A kind, compassionate man who loved and would do anything with his entire being for me, his son, my mom, his wife, and my sisters, his daughters. As we stand here in Aspen saying goodbye to Dad, one of his sayings stands above them all. The family that skis together stays together. Doing things together being the operative word. Well, Dad, we're still here together and we're skiing. And you'll always be able to watch us from here as we continue for many years for more. I love you, Dad.
I'm gonna try to get through this. I'm Lauren, the middle child of the family. Although over the last few years, my dad, when talking to myself and others, would call me by his new nickname, his doctor daughter or Dr. Child. My dad was his own unique personality, funny, charismatic, loving, honest, and genuine. He was always the life of the party with his unique sense of humor, cracking jokes wherever he went, both predictable dad jokes and others more risque, never taking anything in life too seriously. He had a real zest for life, and I can say with certainty that he lived every day to its fullest without any regrets. My dad was also one of the most generous men I know. In every aspect of his life, he would ensure everyone around him was having a good day. As most of you know, he was obsessed with talking, especially on his phone, to whoever would listen. He would always ask everyone he came across how their day was, how their families were, and I was so impressed how he always remembered a special detail of each and every person's life that he had ever met. I like to think that I became a doctor due to my parents' generosity and willingness to help others. But at the center of his life was our family, and I always knew my dad would do anything for me, my mom, brother, and sister, and I will continue to cherish all of our memories together, from our nightly family dinners growing up his support at all our school functions, tennis matches, graduations, family skiing vacations, our father-daughter trip to Europe before I started medical school, and most recently my wedding, where he joyfully gave me away to a man I married because I saw a piece of my dad in his heart. As difficult as it was as an oncology fellow to have an unfiltered understanding of the path my dad would endure after his diagnosis, I find comfort in and feel grateful that I was able to have the knowledge to support my dad, my mom, and my family throughout this difficult time in all of our lives until his last day. My dad has always been a fighter, and although he left this world much too soon, he did so with honor, dignity, and bravery. I don't think there could be a more beautiful place for my dad to rest in peace. As we say goodbye to my dad, I want to recite an adapted quote from my favorite Broadway musical, Rent. You always said how lucky we were, that we were all family, but it was us, Dad, who were the lucky ones. I love you forever, and I'll always be your little girl. Looking around today, my dad would say that this is the poetry of life. From the snowy mountains and the powder ski day, to the life and family he and my mom cultivated, to the friends they developed over the years. The poetry of life was the happiness, the laughter, the joy of being with family and friends, and the beauty of being in and respecting nature, and of course, lots and lots of humor. However, my dad would also say that today, this funeral, was a part of the poetry of life. There is its own beauty, although with it sadness and grief, in laying a loved one down to rest. Because although we are utterly devastated, we are together as family and friends, and that is what is both precious and what is most beautiful in life. That is its own poetry. So I am surrounded today by the poetry of life. I reflect on how much humor, wisdom, and guidance my dad gave to me, Robert, and Lauren throughout the years. I cherish the runs we would go on together, the ski runs we would carve down, and all the opportunities my dad took to reflect, to give wisdom, and to give life lessons. My dad was a magnanimous and unique character. He was generous, had many one-liners, and had unique capability to connect with anyone at a personal level and make them feel both comfortable and heard. Some would say that his humor was a bit dirty, but that was just Dad. As my dad liked to say, each of his kids have 51% of him in them. Whether it's actually 50 or 51% of our DNA, I know that Robert and Lauren and I will always have a piece of Dad in our hearts going forward, and will continue to emulate him and the wonderful, forthright, hilarious father, husband, friend, and businessman that he was. I will always look out for the poetry of life, and because of that, I will always be surrounded by my dad, my family, and my friends. We love you so much, Dad.
מכתם לדוד שרמני אלקי חסיסי וחמרתי לעדיני עדיני אותה טריבוסי בעללך לקדש מאשר בארץ המה. ואדירי kol chefzi bam yirbu at zweisam achar mahar balasich niskemi dom valese shveisam als fasa dimnei manas chalki v'choisi at the teimich geori chavolim nafnu liban ilman afalach la shofla ale abarich es hadin asher yiratzani. Af leles yisruni chulyosi shvisi adene lanegdi saman ki kimini balemi lechin samach libe vayagal kavedi af besari yishkein lavetach kili sazev navshi lishe lasitin chasit chalir shachas tedi eno erechem sebe samach is bedechem imes bemincha netzach elamale rachmim shechin mamememim. Hamtim menuchen geen al kanfi aschina be miles kaddish mit der hedim gesehen hatte ki masim is nishmas ben yamen ben shlemish halach leelam babor shnachn mispal ma das kersh nishmasay nishmasay began eden te him no gastel geen balarach mi asve beses kanaf leelam be yitzer betra geim is nishmasay ade nay hu nachalase vi unach be shalom al mishkavay ben amar amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yotze eschem adin v'zaneh v'chikol eschem adin v'hemes eschem adin v'yedeh misper kolchem badin v'oslach yesem l'kaim eschem adin Baruch atah Adonai mechayim eisim achtigibel elam adin mechayim eisim Ata Rav lahishia v'chalki l'chayim v'ches v'hameisim v'rachim rabim semech v'nefim v'refech elam amater asim kaim v'menasel sheni afar v'chamecha b'alponis v'midei malach malach meim semechayim etzmi Yeshua v'namanat l'hachi yismeisim. We will now lower the coffin, and I'll recite the prayers. It's at this time in our minds, our hearts, that's filled with forgiveness, for love, on all of our behalves. As this is done, I'll recite prayers, and please let your minds and hearts wander as appropriate. Yoshev, v'sei Sorel Yein, v'tzel Shadi, Yislein, and Emal Adonai Machsi, v'tzudas al hayeftach bay, v'hu yatzilchem ipach yakush, v'dever aveis, v'evdasi yasach lach. Pesachas kanafa terse tzine b'sechiri amit ali sinu mipachadeilim chitzi of yemim medeva eval yalech niketu yashir tzaharayim. Yipel mitzitcha elef urivava miminecha elecha la yigash rak beinach esabit. V'shilum asher shem tir kiati adne machsi elyin samta meinecha le'seune lecha ravan egela yikla b'yalecha ki malacha tzave lach l'shmarcha b'chol derachecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam dayan ha'emes, accepting of judgment and forgiveness and love. Hatzor tamim palek yichol drachav mishpat elamuna ve'inav al tzadik v'yasharhu. Hatzor tamim b'chol peil miyem alei matif al hashalat amativ v'mal memisim echayim merid sha'il v'yal. Hatzor tamim b'chol maisim yemen elam atasa imer v'eisa chesed chidam lanu sasa v'zchus ha'neket kisad kshiva v'aseh. Tzadik b'chol derachav hatzor tamim erechapayim emalei rachamim. Chamolna v'chusna alav isubanim kilcha adin asliches v'arachamim. Tzadik ata adin al-hambes al-hachis sher b'yadcha piktein kol deruches chalil lacha zichrei neinu limches yona inecha barachbim aleinu v'kuches. Kilcha adin harachamim v'asliches adam. Imbem yiyeh shana ay elef shanim yichem ayisrin lach. B'lahaya baruch dayna emes meimus u'mechayim. Baruch ki emes dinu u'meshetet akil ba'ina mishalim adam cheshbeinai. V'dina v'akel l'shmai haydaya yitenu. Yadainu adonai ki tzedek mishpatecha titzdak bidvarech v'siske bishvatech v'ein lahar acha mida shavtecha tzadik ata adonai v'yashar mishpatecha dayin emes shefet tzedek v'emes baruch dayin emes shekam mishpat v'tzedek v'emes nefesh kol chai biyadcha tzedek mali yemenecha v'yadecha rachim al pleitat tzin yadecha v'sema la malach heref yadecha gedil ha'etza v'rava al lilila asher inecha v'kuches ikal darchi b'nei adam Laseis leish bedracha v'chipri malala lahagi kiyasha adinei tzuri v'lai avlasa bay Adinei nasan v'adinei lakach Yehi shem adinei mavarach v'hu rachim yichaper oven v'lai yashchis v'hir b'la hashivapay v'lai yair kol chamasay Michtam leDavid Sharmeini ilki chasisi v'chamaytel adinei ata tevasa balolach l'gdeish masher ba'aretz hema v'adirei kol cheftzei bam Yirbu atzveisam achar maharu bal asich niskemi dama valesa eshveis malsfasai. Adinei manas chalki v'chesi atetemech geironu chavalim nafno li bada iman aflachel shofla olay. Avarech es adinei asher yatzani afleiles. Yisruni chal yesi shivisi adinei lenegdi samad ki kimini balemed lachein samach libi v'yagal kveidi. Af besari yishkein lavata kile sazev nafshi lishel asitin chasit chalir shachas tediina erechem sheva samaches es panechen imes bimincha netzach. We'll pour some dirt, just a little bit over the coffin with the family if they would like the honor first. The first shovel we push backwards for the first one to do it. And then we'll recite the mourner's kaddish, the final prayer. This is dirt for Jews. Say the mourner's kaddish.
You take these home too?
I'm sorry?
You take these home?
Sure. Anybody else want a kaddish? Anyone else would like to honor and mitzvah?
I think you want the lamp too.
Just before the family members and anyone else would like to recite the mourner's kaddish that we recite, I'll recite a burial kaddish, and then we'll have Larry play a special kaddish song, and then we'll do the kaddish together just after this burial kaddish. Iskadal v'iskadash me'raba v'oma dehud asit l'is achadita u'le'achaya me'saya u'le'asaka l'chaye oma. U'le'b'minei karta di Yerushalayim u'le'shachle l'hichola v'gava u'le'mekar pulchana v'chra me'ara u'le'sava pulchana d'shmaya la'asra yam l'kucha brichu v'malchusi v'kari v'chayechin v'lechin v'chayit chomeis Yisrael V'galav is mine karibi mu amen. V'hesh me rabba mabarach li'olam li'om elamaya. Yisbarachi yishtabachi yisbararvi yisramami yisnasevi yisadarvi yisalevi yisalal shmei dekucha brichu. V'elam mikol berchasa v'shirasa tushbachas v'nechamasa damir b'yoma v'imur amen. V'esh lam rabba min shmai v'chaim tevu malenu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imur amen. Oser shalom v'mermo v'yaser shalom malenu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imur amen.
I've been praying 3 times a day since you passed away. I remember you, remember you, remember you. Feeling that empty space, I see your smiling face. I remember you, remember you. Itkada, itkada, shemirama. Be'almani berachirutei. As long as I live, you're a part of me, part of you. The rising of the sun, when the day is done, I'll be praising you. Your memory live on. I've been praying 3 times a day since you passed away. I remember you, remember you, remember you. Feeling that empty space, I see your smiling face. I remember you, remember you. Ishmael you would be so proud of me, all that I've done, and what I've become. My legal history, got an angel watching over me. Since you passed away, I remember you, remember you, remember you. Feeling the empty space, I see your smiling face. I remember you, remember you. Now there's an empty chair at the table. All the time we spent together, I'm so grateful. I remember all the things that you said to keep my dreams and aspirations and always to look ahead. I remember you, remember you.
Recite the kaddish now if you could rise. Got it there? You ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3, go.
Gadol, Yisra, Shnei Rabba, Rama, Diva, Kirte, Yadam, Say, Vayom, 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 Israel,
Amen. Yehesh me Rabba Mavarach, Le'olam Lamed Layam.
Closing thought and hearing those words and the great loss that we are here to pay respects to and remember reminds me of the 16th century great mystic and sage, the founder of the Hasidic movement, the Baal Shem Tov, was asked the day of a funeral. And hearing your words, this thought came to my mind, his response. And he says, I cry a little, which is appropriate and understandable. He says, I'm silent, which also is appropriate. In retrospect, we think about the great loss. And he said, I sing. And his students and followers asked him, sing. If there's one day where perhaps song doesn't seem so appropriate or to fit so well, it's the day where you bury a loved one and say goodbye to a dear friend and mentor and the patriarch of a family. And he responded that through the course of one's life, each and every individual creates a song, or in this case, the poetry of life. And that I take that poetry and I live with it every day of my life. I take it wherever I go, so it's with me. And whenever there's a question, it's what would Barry do? What would Barry respond? How would Dad respond? What would our dear friend and loved one respond in such a scenario or in such a case? So what would he do? And we know by looking at life through that lens, we're guaranteed to make the right decision, the good choice, and the happy and healthy choice for now and forever. So may the family only know of joy, of happiness, and may God comfort you. Only know of peace, blessings, comfort, and good health. May the legacy be a living legacy that lives on forever and continues to give and grow. And may we only celebrate simchas from here on out. The family is observing Shiva, I believe via Zoom.
Correct.
That information I have, or we can send it via email. You can reach out to any family member to get that. Is the first one today or later on this evening? And you're welcome to join or spread the word as well. Thank you all, and may we only meet for happy and joyous occasions.